This tiny gold Rolex may be small, but it has some pretty big problems. Greetings good people, and a very warm welcome to you all. So I have what is probably the smallest Rollie ever, and it's smaller than a garden pea. And the smaller they are, the more drama they bring. Could wear it as a ring. Will you marry me? No, get away from me. This one has a missing stem and crown, so I haven't been able to just wind it and see if it works. It's a 9-carat gold piece with integrated bracelet, and I haven't been able to ascertain the date this watch was produced, but the case and bracelet were manufactured in the UK by DS&S. You can see some of the lovely lady armcheese. This bracelet looks like a lizard got fossilized into a tree bark. Just to show you, I haven't doctored the footage. There's the P and there's the Rollie. So based on the case manufacturer and the movement used in this watch, we can say that it's from around the 1950s onwards. But based on the design of the integrated bracelet, I would even go late 1960s or even the 70s. So I've got a stem for it. This piece was purchased for about £400 in this condition, and after restoration it should fetch near the £3,000 mark in today's marketplace and the current gold prices. I think that one is the right size. Let's use that one. I think this crown might be a bit too small. That's a nice ornament actually. So it's just winding and nothing's happening. I can't feel any resistance. So I'm assuming the mainspring is broken and there's something wrong with the setting lever. Maybe the springs come off it because the hands work, but the crown pulls out, stem pulls out. So now that I have a stem and the correct crown, which were our initial problems, I have now found two more issues. We have a broken mainspring and most likely some damage to the keyless works. So my hunch was right about the setting lever spring. You can see it's broken off here, so we have to find a replacement for that. So I had a look online for a setting lever spring for this movement, which is a caliber 282, and I couldn't find anything. But I have a stash of old setting lever springs, which I haven't used in decades, as these are for the not so prestigious movement manufacturers that went extinct years ago. So that's my last resort. So if you look at the setting lever on our Rolex, I've managed to not find one, but two of them. That should be perfect. It's pretty cool, huh? Now you're probably thinking, how does this dude just happen to find a couple of Rolex parts in a stash of old junk? Well, you see my friends, I wasn't actually looking for a Rolex part. I knew there weren't any Rolex parts in this stash, but I do know that this stash contains parts from those non-prestigious brands I mentioned earlier, such as Adolf Shield, FHF, FEF and other movement manufacturers in this same sort of ilk, and Rolex used movements from these Boucher manufacturers and branded them as their own during those early decades. So this movement is actually based on a Felser movement, and I knew my tub contained Felser parts, hence why I managed to find some Felser setting lever springs for our Rolex. That is way too small for my tool, so we'll just use the edge of the tool. So let's set the record straight and see just exactly how big this thing is. 13.7 millimeters. So excluding the tiny rectangular stuff, can we agree that this is the smallest Rolex movement ever? Let me know if you guys know of a smaller one. This balance is so small and so cute. And look how many cute little screws are on there. It's awesome. So we can see now caliber number just there, 282. With that lovely bit of snailing on the crown wheel and ratchet wheel, and we've got a bit of perlage work as well. Oh, that's a long screw for such a small movement. How's it going, mate? Good. Feeling better? Yeah, good. Oh, that one's shorter. That one's short as well. Nice bit of bevel in there. And we also have the duo fix shock setting. So we could have removed the barrel bridge first, might have been easier, but we can still do that now. And this one is going to be clockwise probably, just because that center wheel is sitting underneath the ratchet wheel. Just makes it easier. Should have anticipated that. So here is our 5th issue so far. Can you see what it is? So we have a cracked escape wheel, and if I had a laser welder, then I would have at least tried to experiment with welding it together and see how it performs. But sadly I don't have a laser welder, so I will have to replace this part. That was a hint, by the way, to any laser welding companies who might want to send me one for free. So look at the state of that thing. Some of you may recognize this movement, but not as the 282. Well, the 282 was replaced by the 1400 series, which is very similar in design and size with some slight differences, and was launched in the 1960s. The caliber 1400 is around 13.8 millimeters, so the 282 wins by 1/10 of a millimeter. These things are so small, my tweezers aren't coping. I've also had to sharpen my screwdrivers because they don't seem to fit the slits on the screw heads. But apart from the hard to work on scale, the movement itself is very simple with just a handful of parts. I did notice earlier that the inside of the case back had plenty of service marks, so the initial owner did look after this watch, so I wonder why it was then abandoned in this state. But I assume its last encounter may have been at the hands of a tinkerer who couldn't find the right parts, or there are even more problems that I haven't yet discovered, spoiler alert, which may have tipped our tinkerer friend over the edge, so he decided to preserve his sanity and kicked it down the road. Very simple. And that's it for that side. And then on this side we have the Inca block style one with the hinge. There's a winding pinion and the sliding pinion. So you've got the whole movement there, and we've got just a little bit of perlage work just here. What's that all about? Looks like they couldn't be asked because it's such a small movement. They probably thought sod it. Right. So let's have a look at this mainspring and see what's going on with it. Because again, this is another part that's not really available, but you can order similar size as long as you know the dimensions. So you can see I couldn't even find the broken part. The hook is gone. So that's our problem there. So I will measure it out, and you can measure the width. This one's around 1.25, I think. Thickness 0.05, and then you'd measure the barrel. And the barrel is about 5.25, 5.3. So we'll use those measurements and see if we can find something close. So the thickness is around 1.3, 1.35. So nothing came up for my search, so I'll have to go for the next closest one, which is 1.35. So the height is correct. The thickness was 0.05, so I had to go slightly thicker. It should be fine. And then the barrel is 5.5, which would give us a length of about 160. So that's the closest one, and the code is GR3460. Found the tail end of the hook, and that's all the parts really. Bit of a salad, isn't it? So the mainspring won't go in because we've got a big rim here. The base of the mainspring keeps getting stuck on that rim. So I'm gonna have to take it out and wind it in. And that's because, remember, our barrel was like 5.25, but we couldn't find that, so we had to get 5.5. So we just remove the mainspring from its little packet in the normal way. And then we'll wind it back in using 00. It's gotta be 00, hasn't it? I mean, that's the smallest winder possible. And since we're saying this is a record-breaking smallest movement ever, kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And even that seems not quite small enough, but it'll have to do. So not being able to find the correct mainspring would be a big reason why someone would have abandoned this project. And ordering one which isn't quite the right size also has its challenges. So in our situation, we had to go for a longer spring, which means it doesn't completely fit inside my tool. The tail end got left outside, so I will have to use some horology kung fu and angle it in. So this is what happens when you can't find the exact size mainspring. You can see it sticking out a little bit, so it just needs a little help. That's a normal size 7, and that is 00. Hardly any room in there, but we managed to get it in. So I did manage to get the mainspring in, and I hope there's a lesson in there for you if you're struggling to find the exact mainspring. As long as the width is correct, then the length and thickness can have some wiggle room. There's too much oil! So let's get this little PEA back together, and I'm giving you some of these wider shots so you can see my small hands against this tiny movement. Now there isn't an oil sheet for this movement, nor the 1400, but you'll need some D5, some 9010, some 941 and some 9501. So I start off with the mainspring barrel and then the setting lever screw, and I use D5 on these parts. The barrel bridge then goes on, held in by 2 screws. So far so good, and I was hoping for an early night. So I have my replacement escape wheel, and this part will cost you around 50 quid if you're looking for a Rolex 282 escape wheel. But if you bought a Felser one, you could probably get it for a tenner and they'd be exactly the same. With the barrel bridge secure, I assembled the train, starting off with the escape wheel, followed by the 4th wheel, and then the 3rd wheel, and then the center wheel. And while I get the train wheel bridge on, I think this is a good time to remind you all to hit that subscribe button. It doesn't hurt you if you do, but it hurts my feelings if you don't. Don't play with my feelings. I'm a sensitive guy, you know. No, but seriously, do it. And hit the like button.
You're so demanding.
Silence, Goyim! Remember, the train wheel bridge has 1 long screw out of the 3, which goes on the tail end of the bridge. Once the bridge is secure, we can now assemble the winding mechanism, and this includes the click and its spring, the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel. And since the topic of today's video is all about size, did you know that the world's smallest movement is only 4.8 millimeters wide compared to our 13.7 and has 98 individual parts? The smallest movement, caliber 101, was invented by JLC all the way back in 1929, and still holds that record today. But it was a rectangular movement, so although it may have been 4.8 millimeters wide, it was miles long. Now I want to sound all excited and say I would love to work on one and feature it on the channel, but I don't think I really do. The smaller the movement, the less forgiving they are, and my eyes have become lazy and unruly. Do you guys want to see the 101 on my bench? Let me know in the comments. The late Queen Elizabeth II wore a watch by Jaeger-LeCoultre with the caliber 101 at her coronation in 1953. So unless that one turns up for auction, I don't know where else I would even get one. JLC, however, still uses the caliber 101 after nearly 100 years. Here's one for sale for £187,000. £187,000. I suppose we could do a whip round just to see one in real life. Okay, so now I've got the ratchet wheel and crown wheel in, and I can now finally give this watch some power and see if it moves. But as I started to oil the jewels, things started to go wrong. So you can see it's lifted out, and then you can just pull it across that way. These dual fixed springs are not my favourite, but they slide up once the tip is released. But my one got a bit too excited and flew out. I wasn't worried about it at this point. Don't worry, he's not going to get far. There's the stone and there's the spring. And that's why you see all these little blemishes on my mat, because it does have anti-bounce properties. So things don't really bounce away that far. Boing, see? Here's the spring. Didn't get far, did it? Jewel is not sitting flush for some reason. The pivot sticks out quite a bit. Might be the depthing of the jewels. So I might have to re-depth that jewel. The jewel is rocking on that pivot, and that is not right. So I don't know whether that was the reason I was having difficulties removing that spring, because somebody just crammed it in somehow. Whether it's something I did, either way, I'm gonna have to remove the bridge and re-depth the jewel. So you can see how easily that whole setting just drops out, and after investigating I realized that it was something I did that caused the whole setting to sink, causing the pivot of the escape wheel to stick out, and this happened while I was trying to refit the spring and reinstall the jewel. But the Chaton should not move with such ease, and that's because the hole on the bridge is too wide, and most likely a pre-existing issue. This whole unit is friction fitted on, and you can see I can just push it down with my fingers, so any sort of maintenance work that requires a bit of rigor on the shock setting would just dislodge that Chaton, and that should not happen. How many times have we had a little battle with the shock spring, but the Chaton is always firmly in place, so that's not quite right on this movement and needs to be addressed. One way to address this issue is to replace the whole bridge, but it can also be repaired. So I've got my staking set out, and I'm going to shrink the diameter of that hole by forcing the metal around it inwards. Now to get the unit in at the correct depth, I'll be using my cheap copy of a Haraya tool, which you can buy from sites like AliExpress. And I really want to tell you guys not to buy one of these, but I don't have the heart to do it because the alternative is very expensive. You're talking over £1,000 for a genuine one with the accessories. I've never considered spending that amount of money on a jeweling tool, as it's not something I often do, so couldn't justify the cost. So I certainly don't expect a hobbyist to spend that sort of money. So although the cheap copies aren't great, they can still provide an alternative. But my advice is, if you do buy one of these cheap ones, make sure you check the accessories within the return window, because sometimes they are rusty and the pump spring action doesn't work or gets jammed, so you'll end up cracking your jewels. So now I'm just oiling up the jewel, and then we will see if I've managed to get it at the correct depth first time round. But once I reinstalled the bridge and gave the mainspring some power, the whole train should have been flying, but it wasn't moving at all. See, now I've loosened up all the screws. Now if I give the mainspring a little wind, you can see the whole train moves. But as soon as I tighten up the screws, see, just tightened it a little bit, that screw, and there's no movement. So now I know that the escape wheel pivot is sitting too tight to the jewel, so I need to raise the Chaton, and I can do that from the underside using the fine increments on the tool. So now I haven't even tightened the screws yet. You can see the whole train moving. After the second attempt, it still didn't work, so I had to do it all over again. And that's the best way to do it, one small increment at a time. It may seem like you haven't done anything, but trust me, when it comes to this level of scale and detail, one increment is a lot. And now you can see with all the screws tightened up, the train moves freely. But that's not the end of our problems yet. Once I installed the balance, everything seems to work fine, but as soon as I tightened up the screw, it stopped. I removed the hairspring to look at the underside of the cock and the jewel setting, but you can see it's fixed down with a clip, so it's not something that can be adjusted. I also removed the shock setting on the dial side, and the same, not something I can re-depth. So instead, I'm going to use a very sophisticated cheat code. Let's just get it back in and oil up that jewel. You can see it's like a score line, a bit strange, or maybe somebody at some point put the wrong jewel in. So here you can see the balance swings, but as soon as I turn the movement on its sides, it stops again. And this is my cheat code, and I'm not the only one to use a shim underneath the balance cock. Some top brands use the same trick, and that seems to have done the job. So as a souvenir, I got a little shim sticking out, but it's working when you tip it over as well. And it's working this way. Phew! It's a bit better. Oh yeah. Listen down. Good. Okay, so I've left the polishing until the end on this episode, as there isn't much to do. Small watch and all. But first, let's give these hands a little tidy up. They are gold, so I just give them a light buff. And you've seen me go absolutely mental on dials previously, such as the Seiko Presage I did a while back, which you can view up here. And this one could do with some rigorous cleaning because it had stained over the years. But this dial is a lacquered dial, and the print is usually on top of the lacquer. So I don't want to dance around with this one too much and risk peeling that lacquer off and the print along with it. So I just give it a light clean with some water. And knowing when to go crazy and when to restrain yourself is the difference between an okay watchmaker and one that cries a lot. Why did I do that? I should have just left it alone. And this dial is a bit cheeky because it's given us the middle finger. Now it's a well-known fact that women don't fart, and nor do they produce arm cheese, like us disgusting fellas. And that's the rosy worldview I had of the opposite sex until today. So I'm just going to get this in the wash to get rid of some of this lady arm cheese. But be warned, what you're about to see may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the opposite sex. And you may not look at her in the same way ever again. Okay, the case and bracelet just need a really light buff, and I mean really light, and that will bring this thing up really nice. I'll show you the number of passes I make without editing too much so you can see how quick it should be. We don't want to, and we don't really need to be removing any gold on this piece as it's already a really nice and tidy piece. This side was probably the worst because the previous crown was too close to the case and has scored around it. Now after doing the case back, I could see some streaks, which means there's some grit stuck on my fine mop, so I dressed down the mop and buffed the piece again. I also give the bracelet a quick once over just to remove some of that tarnishing. And while I'm here, I thought I'd give the plexi a little go too, and it came up really nice, but upon closer inspection I could see some internal cracks. I see nothing from the top. If you look carefully, you can see the internal cracks. That's what I just said. But anyway, I've got myself a replacement. Wow. Look at that. Now I couldn't find a Rolex crown, so I stuck this dustproof one on, and as I was filming the final reveal, a Rolex crown turned up, which looks like it was in hellfire, so I cleaned it up and stuck it on. And that's it really for today's episode. I should call this episode Big Trouble in Little Rolex, as we had so many little problems. Or maybe I'll title it The Hidden Truth About Lady Armcheese. This piece may look as delicate as a pea, but the evidence from the ultrasonic shows that she has seen some action in her life. Miss Trunchbull, but now she's ready to serve once again. Whether it be on the wrist of a Miss Trunchbull or a Miss Honey, she's ready for anything. I was going to offer it to my Mrs. Trunchbull, but after finding out that she's been lying to me all these years about women not farting, I've changed my mind and will sell it to get myself some counselling. Anyway, thank you all for being here with me today, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode and gained some knowledge along the way. If you did, then do all that supportive YouTube stuff by pressing some of those buttons. Look after yourselves, friends, and look after each other. Let's keep fighting the demons of this world to save the precious little peas that are being squished and ethnically cleansed from their gardens. Tra folks, love.